Hey there, fellow public servants.
Hey.
Today's deep dive is all about you
Okay.
and how something called event logging can actually help you make a real difference in the lives of citizens.
Interesting.
I know it doesn't exactly sound like the most thrilling topic,
Right.
but trust me, this is about way more than just tech jargon.
It really is. At its core, event logging is about understanding the story your data tells. As public servants, you're entrusted with incredibly important information. Think about the personal data you handle every day.
Yeah,
Health records, financial information, social insurance numbers.
sure.
Event logging helps you track what happens to that data, who accesses it, and when.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But how does knowing all that translate into actually helping people?
Imagine you're working on a new online service portal for citizens.
Okay.
By analyzing event logs, you can see where people are getting stuck, what features they're using most,
Mm-hmm.
and even identify potential security vulnerabilities. That means you can make the service more user-friendly, efficient, and secure.
So it's like having a behind-the-scenes look at how people are interacting with the systems we create.
Exactly.
Right.
And that insight can be incredibly powerful.
Right.
It allows you to make data-driven decisions, demonstrate accountability to the public, and ultimately deliver better services to the people you serve.
I'm starting to see why this is important.
Yeah.
Now, to guide our deep dive today, we're using the event logging guidance from the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat. It might sound a little dry,
Yeah.
but this document is actually packed with valuable insights for anyone who works with data and digital systems, even if you're not a tech expert.
It's a really practical document,
Mm,
and it starts by laying out the why of event logging, which is particularly important for public servants.
right, let's get to the why.
Yeah.
Why should we care about this, especially in the context of public service?
Well, the document points out that the threat environment is becoming increasingly hostile.
Okay.
We're seeing more sophisticated cyber attacks, more data breaches, and more attempts to exploit vulnerabilities in our systems. As public servants, we have a responsibility to protect the sensitive information entrusted to us.
And that's where event logging comes in.
Absolutely. Think of it like a security camera for your computer or network.
No.
Event logs record, who accessed what, when, and from where. That information can be incredibly valuable for detecting and responding to potential threats.
Okay, so it's about keeping citizen data safe. But the document also mentions something about service continuity.
Hmm.
What does that mean in this context?
Service continuity is all about making sure essential services remain available to the public even in the face of disruptions. Imagine a cyber attack takes down a critical government website or system.
Right.
Event logs can help you understand the scope of the attack, identify the source, and recover more quickly, minimizing the impact on citizens.
So it's not just about reacting to bad things happening, it's also about proactively protecting services that people rely on.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just security. Event logging can help you improve those services, make them more efficient, and even tailor them to better meet the needs of the people using them.
That's where the background section of the document comes in, right? It talks about how event logs can be used for more than just security purposes.
Yes. What's fascinating here is that event logs can actually reveal patterns of behavior bottlenecks in areas where services could be improved. By analyzing these logs, you can identify opportunities to streamline processes, enhance user experience, and even personalize services based on individual needs.
That's a great point. It's not just about protecting data. It's about using that data to make things better for the people we serve.
Precisely. And that ties directly back to the core values of public service.
Yeah.
Transparency, accountability, and continuous improvement.
Those values are also reflected in the specific requirements laid out in Section 1.3 of the document, right?
Absolutely. The document highlights several key requirements for event logging that are particularly relevant to public servants. For example, it emphasizes the need to support decision-making, take corrective actions, and demonstrate accountability.
Okay, let's break those down. How can event logs actually help with decision-making in a public service context?
Well, imagine you're working on a program to provide financial assistance to citizens in need. By analyzing event logs from the application process, you can see where people are struggling, identify common errors, and even pinpoint potential areas of bias or discrimination. That data can then inform policy decisions and program improvements.
That's incredibly insightful. So it's about using data not just to measure outcomes, but to actually understand the why behind those outcomes.
Exactly. And that understanding can lead to more informed, equitable, and effective policies and programs.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now, what about taking corrective actions? How do event logs help with that?
Let's say you're managing a team responsible for processing passport applications. By monitoring event logs, you might notice a sudden spike in errors or processing delays. That could be a sign of a technical issue, a staffing shortage, or even a potential security breach. By identifying the problem early, you can take corrective action to minimize the impact on citizens and ensure the smooth operation of the service.
So it's like having an early warning system that helps you spot problems before they become major headaches.
Exactly. And it allows you to respond more quickly and effectively, which ultimately benefits the people who rely on those services.
Okay, and the last requirement we mentioned was demonstrating accountability. How do event logs help with that?
Well, public trust is essential for effective public service. Citizens need to know that their information is being handled responsibly and that we're using their data ethically. Event logs can provide a clear and auditable trail of how data is being used, who has access to it, and what actions are being taken to protect it.
So it's about transparency and showing that we're taking data security seriously.
Yeah, precisely.
Mhm.
And that transparency can help build trust and strengthen the relationship between government and citizens. And, even if you're not directly involved in managing IT systems,
Right.
understanding the basics of event logging can help you work more effectively
Yeah,
with your IT and security teams.
that's a good point. It's about being an informed and engaged partner, even if you're not the technical expert.
Exactly. And that brings us to section 1.4 of the document,
Okay.
which highlights the related security controls
Okay.
from ITEST G33.
ITEST G33. That sounds a little intimidating.
Don't worry, it's not as complicated as it sounds.
Right.
ITEST G33 basically outlines a whole range of security practices that are relevant to government systems. And event logging is a foundational element for many of those practices.
So it's like the building block for a whole range of security measures.
Exactly. Things like access control, incident handling, and vulnerability management
Right.
all rely on effective event logging. So even if you're not directly involved in those areas, understanding the basics can help you advocate for strong data protection practices
Yeah.
within your own department or team.
Okay, so we've covered the why of event logging.
Yeah.
Now let's get to the how.
Okay.
Section 1.5 of the document dives into implementation guidance, which sounds like it's where things get really practical.
It is. This section is all about what you can actually do on a day-to-day basis to make sure you're logging the right information
Right.
and using it effectively.
And the document emphasizes the importance of having a logging and monitoring strategy, even if it's just at a departmental level.
Right.
What does that actually look like in practice?
A logging and monitoring strategy basically outlines what information is most critical to log,
Okay.
how long to retain those logs, and how to protect them from unauthorized access.
So it's like a roadmap for making sure you're capturing the right data and using it responsibly. But what about resource constraints?
Sure.
Public servants are often dealing with limited budgets and staff.
Yeah,
How do we balance security needs with those practical considerations?
that's a great question. And the document actually addresses that directly in section 1.5.2,
Okay.
which focuses on log retention and preservation.
Okay.
It highlights the need to find a balance between security and practical considerations.
So it's about being strategic and prioritizing what's most important to log based on your specific needs and resources.
Exactly. And it might mean making some tough decisions about what to keep and what to discard, but the guidance provides helpful tips on how to make those decisions effectively.
Now, section 1.5.3 also makes it clear that logging is pretty useless if the logs themselves are compromised.
Right. It defeats the entire purpose if someone can tamper with the logs or delete them altogether.
So what can we do to protect this information and ensure its integrity?
The document highlights several key strategies for protecting log information,
Notes.
such as implementing access control mechanisms,
Mhm.
performing regular backups,
Okay.
and even using file integrity verification to detect any unauthorized changes.
So it's about treating those logs with the same level of care and attention that we give to any other sensitive information.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that protecting those logs is essential for maintaining public trust.
Right.
Citizens need to know that we're taking data security seriously
Yeah.
and that we're doing everything we can to safeguard their information.
Okay, so we've covered the why and the how of event logging. Now let's get to Appendix A of the document is called Recommended Events to Log, and it seems like it's packed with really specific recommendations.
It is. It's a goldmine of information. But instead of going through the entire list,
Sure.
let's focus on a few categories that are particularly relevant to public service.
Sounds good. What should we start with?
Well, authentication and authorization is a big one.
Okay.
Table A2 lays out all the key events you should be tracking related to who is accessing your systems and what they're doing with that access.
Okay.
Things like successful and failed login attempts, password changes, and any use of privileged accounts.
So basically keeping track of who's coming and going in the digital world and what they're doing once they're inside.
Exactly. This is especially crucial when you think about all the sensitive citizen information we handle.
Yeah.
We need to know who accessed what and when,
Right.
especially if there's ever a question of a privacy breach.
Right. It's about being able to trace back actions and understand who was responsible for what, especially if something goes wrong.
And these logs can also help you demonstrate accountability to the public. You can show that you're taking data security seriously and that you have systems in place to track any unauthorized access.
Okay, what other categories are important for public servants to be aware of?
Well, data loss prevention is a big one.
Okay.
Table A5 outlines a whole range of events that can help you detect and prevent unauthorized data transfer, suspicious data access patterns, or attempts to bypass security controls.
So it's about keeping an eye out for anything that looks like someone might be trying to steal data or misuse it in some way.
Exactly. And this is particularly important in the context of public service because the data we handle is often incredibly sensitive. Just imagine the impact of a breach involving health records or social insurance numbers.
That's a scary thought.
Yeah.
But having these logs in place can help us catch potential problems before they become major incidents.
Right. Absolutely. It's like having an early warning system for data breaches. And it allows you to respond quickly and effectively to minimize the impact on citizens.
Okay, now I know more and more government services are moving to the cloud. Does that change how we think about event logging?
It does. Cloud environments can be incredibly complex.
Right.
With data spread across multiple servers and services, Table A14 in the document has some great recommendations for what specific events to focus on in the cloud.
Like what kind of events?
Well, you want to make sure you're logging events related to things like changes to security policies, access to sensitive data stores, and any activity involving privileged accounts.
So it's about understanding who has access to what data in the cloud and what they're doing with it.
Exactly. And remember, those cloud providers have their own logging systems as well. So you need to be working closely with them
Okay.
to understand how their logs can complement your own and ensure you have a complete picture of what's happening.
So it's all about collaboration and communication.
It is. And it's important to remember that event logging isn't just about reacting to incidents or investigating breaches. It can also be used proactively to improve service delivery.
Oh, absolutely. We talked earlier about using event logs to understand user behavior and identify areas for improvement. Are there other ways we can use this data to make things better for citizens?
Definitely. For example, you can analyze logs from your online service portals to identify common pain points for citizens, streamline processes, and even personalize the user experience.
So it's about using data to make those services as user-friendly and efficient as possible.
Exactly. And those logs can also help you demonstrate the value of your work to the public. You can show how many people are using your services, how those services are impacting their lives, and how you're constantly working to make things better.
It's all about closing the loop and showing that we're not just collecting data for the sake of it, but that we're actually using it to make a real difference in the lives of Canadians.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah.
I think it's clear that event logging is a powerful tool for public servants.
It really is.
Uh.
It's about more than just security.
Sure.
It's about transparency, accountability, and ultimately better serving the public.
And before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a challenge.
Okay.
Think about your own work,
Yeah.
your own department,
Mm-hmm.
your own sphere of influence.
Right.
How can you apply these ideas
Yeah.
to improve data security,
Mm-hmm.
enhance transparency, and better serve the citizens of Canada?
Maybe it's advocating for a stronger logging and monitoring strategy
Right.
within your team,
Yeah.
or perhaps it's simply being more aware of the data you handle and the importance of protecting it.
Maybe it's suggesting new ways to use event logs to improve service delivery
Right.
or measure the impact you do programs.
Exactly.
The possibilities are endless.
Yeah, the key is to start thinking about event logging, not as a technical burden, but as a strategic asset.
Mm-hmm.
That can empower us to make a real difference.
And if you're feeling inspired to learn more, I highly recommend checking out the full event logging guidance document from the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat. We'll be sure to include a link in the show notes.
It's a fantastic resource. And with that, we've reached the end of our deep dives into event logging. We hope you found it informative, engaging, and maybe even a little bit inspiring.
It was great.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep up the great work serving the public.